The abrupt cancellation of the Ravens joint practice due to a scheduling conflict created a sudden pivot in a week that also saw the Commanders continue to tweak the bottom of their roster. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, and right here with you 5 days a week. You can also find me writing about the Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com, and you can follow me on X at DHarrison82. I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view, and to the everydayers out there, those of you who come through for every single episode, a big thank you goes out to you specifically. If you haven't already, anybody out there, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode. And if it's your first time coming through, thanks for finding us. Hopefully you like it and you come back again for more real soon. Coming up on today's episode, we are going to talk about the offensive line shifts and rotations, taking advantage of some off days for some veterans on Thursday. We're going to hear from offensive line coach Bobby Johnson on just about everything that we can talk about in about a 10-minute window about the offensive line. But first, we are going to start with the news that came out early Thursday that the Baltimore Ravens and Washington Commanders have mutually agreed to cancel their joint training camp practice session that was scheduled for next Thursday. All of that is coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Starting off today's episode, Dan Quinn is already putting his stamp on the team by prioritizing player health and roster evaluation over a high-profile joint practice. Obviously, everybody loves joint training camp practices. I haven't met a head coach yet that hasn't agreed that you really get a lot out of these joint training camp practices. And in fact, usually, especially for your starting lineup, you get more out of the joint practices than you get out of the preseason games. Why? Because you can do more things. You can throw more at each other from a team-to-team perspective, and you're in a controlled environment. The quarterback still can't get hit. You're not really usually taking guys to the ground. Sometimes we've seen some joint practices where they go full tackle, full contact, and all that stuff. But you're still in a situation where, look, if this guy's hitting a little too hard, that guy got hit a little too much, you can take him out, you can cut his reps without worrying about winning or losing a football game, right? So those types of things. Then you get to the preseason game, and it gives you the opportunity to get even more reps for bottom of the roster guys, your rookies, things like that. So while you lost that preseason game, it gives you the opportunity to make up some of those reps in the preseason games now that there's only 3 of them, right? But so it's a great advantage and a great opportunity for every team to go through, and you see more and more across the league teams moving to holding joint practices. Last year, the Washington Commanders were part of 2. This year, they were part of 1 with the New England Patriots. We're supposed to be a part of another with the Baltimore Ravens. But again, that news coming out Thursday, literally just before Dan Quinn walked into the media tent for his pre-practice press conference. The news came out that the Ravens and Commanders had canceled that upcoming joint training camp practice. Head coach Dan Quinn told us that he and the Ravens head coach John Harbaugh spoke the night before, and that, quote, sometimes just schedules don't sync up, end quote. And I think the biggest part of this thing is the Washington Commanders' next preseason game is this coming Monday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. And if it seems like that's quite a while since the last time we've seen them play, well, it is, because they played last Friday, and then you're waiting not just to this next week, but you're waiting all the way to Monday. You can't have a further stretch in the NFL preseason schedule than they have for this first and second game. But then you have to go from Monday night to Friday or to Saturday afternoon for your very next game. It just leaves a very small window. And my understanding most likely is what happened is the Baltimore Ravens, who play their next preseason game on Saturday, wanted to hold this practice on either Tuesday or Wednesday for their sake. But the Washington Commanders obviously playing Monday night. You're not having a full padded joint practice on Tuesday. And even Wednesday is a pretty quick turnaround from having some of your players, most of your players, if not all your players in pads, to then doing another padded practice on Wednesday. That's just not a safe idea for your player safety and for all those things. So that basically would mean the Commanders to Thursday, which for the Baltimore Ravens, now you're talking about, well, we're about 1.5 days away from, or two days total from playing the game. So it's just a little bit too far to go between the preseason game and Saturday padded practice against the Commanders. So yeah, whatever it is, whatever hurdles they just couldn't get through, basically the two teams deciding, well, look, we want this for our player safety and preparation. You need this for your player safety and preparation. It's not going to work out for both of us. Let's just both prioritize our player safety and preparation. go our separate ways. It was a good try, just didn't work out. Dan Quinn also emphasized that the cancellation of the Baltimore Ravens joint practice does not affect the playing time plan for the preseason game against Cincinnati Bengals. Regarding that question, DQ said, quote, "No, I separated those before we even thought about for Baltimore. We got a big crew that will get some reps in the game versus Cincinnati. The plan will be to have some of the starters get some snaps. It'll be customized, but it wasn't affected by the joint practice. I was looking forward to it just because we regard their team well. But like I said, sometimes it just doesn't sync up as it's going. So we're bummed about it. But like I said, always the best choice for the guys." End quote. How many of those starters are going to play? Honestly, I'd be a little surprised if like Bobby Wagner played. I'd probably be a little bit surprised if Zach Ertz played. But I do expect Jaden Daniels to play at least a series or two. Probably not going to see him take a lot of deep drops or a lot of like long developing route combinations, things like that, because the longer he stands back there, obviously, the more likely he is to get hit. And that's just a risk I don't think this offense wants to take. But I also expect to see Laremy Tunsil out there for a little bit. You want to get your starting line as many live shots as you possibly can, knowing that there's no joint practice coming up, potentially could impact that just a little bit, even though DQ says it won't. So we'll see what happens. We don't have any hard confirmation on any of that right now. So that's just kind of my gut feeling on these types of things. But certainly you're going to see at least some of the starters get action on Monday night against Cincinnati Bengals. In other news, 2 or 3 roster moves total. 2 new players added to the roster on Thursday morning. 1 player off the roster Thursday morning on August 14th. The Commanders announced they signed safety Daryl Worley as a free agent safety. DQ actually revealing that in his press conference specifically. Worley is 6'1", 208 pounds, 9-year NFL veteran. He's played in 17 games for the Baltimore Ravens last year. Has also spent time with the Panthers, Raiders, Cowboys, Bills, and Lions. The team also signed free agent wide receiver River Cracraft. Cracraft is 6 foot nothing, 198 pounds. He's at 45 career games under his belt, most recently with the Miami Dolphins, but has also played with the Broncos and the 49ers. And to make room for Cracraft, they released wide receiver Michael Strachan, who Michael Strachan has been kind of a star of some of the practices of training camp here so far through this up to this moment. And really, I think what it boils down to is too many key dropped passes. We see Michael Strachan drop several passes, especially in the end zone, and obviously those scoring opportunities more than any other pass. You got to be able to bring those in. So I think Michael Strachan most likely undone by those mistakes. Cracraft is seen getting reps as a punt returner during practice as well, so perhaps that kind of influences things as well. As far as practice is concerned, a number of players were not participating in practice. Presumed vet days off for at least most of these guys. Laremy Tunsil was dealing with what I believe is a slight groin pull or strain or, whatever you want to call it. Did participate in the burgundy and gold scrimmage, full padded practice. So obviously you think things look good there, but he was not on the field today. On Thursday, Brandon Coleman is still dealing with his injury, so he was off the field. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, quarterback Marcus Mariota, safety Tyler Owen, the cornerback Jonathan Jones, also in that same boat. Tight end Zach Ertz, also not on the field, most likely a vet day off. Nothing to be too concerned about there. Marcus Mariota did stay behind practice. He observed part of practice. We also stayed behind after practice, along with Jaden Daniels and Josh Johnson, veteran backup. Got some extra throws in as well. So he's certainly out there working. Looked pretty good for the most part. So again, nothing that's probably super concerning, like to a normal human being with a normal job, probably wouldn't be all that limiting, but to an NFL player trying to play NFL football, the elite athletic level, something that, they want to take care of. While the head coach manages the big picture, the real work of building a resilient roster happens in the position rooms, especially along the offensive line. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. We've been talking about how the Commanders are staying flexible and preparing for the what ifs by shuffling the roster. Well, your finance deserves that same level of attention. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those alone saved me money every single month. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNFL. Offensive line coach Bobby Johnson is building a unit where versatility isn't just a bonus, It's a requirement. And up next, we're going to go one-on-one with offensive line coach Bobby Johnson to discuss building versatility and developing the young talent up front. All right, coach, let's start with just the entire unit, right? Just how the formation of the offensive line has come in this training camp. Second year, getting your hands on these guys. How do you think it's going so far?
I think progression's going really well. You're still going through some normal training camp type of things, different rotations, different combinations, catching some young guys up to speed like you always have to do. So I like the direction we're heading, but we're going through the normal kind of training camp process.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said that. So Josh Connolly Jr. getting some left tackle reps today. My assumption is that Laremy Tunsil's off today, so get the rookie some burn over there. Was that what that is?
Yeah, you always have to prepare for like the what ifs. So today was a good day with the walkthrough, and being Laramie's off day, it was kind of like, hey, what if? What if we got in a game and hey, busted a shoelace, or hey, get chucked, So you just, days like today where it's a little bit lower tempo, less of an install. Hey, okay, let's practice this what if. And so that was really it. And for him, it's probably a little bit of a breather because he's so used to playing left. He's done a great job moving over to right, and now he's starting to see the little ambidextrous, kind of play out of him. So, you kind of have to work those because very rarely do you have the same combination throughout the whole season. So you have to kind of work some different scenarios and things like that, different combinations for, hey, what if this guy's down? What if this guy was down and this guy was down? So you kind of work through some of those, and that's what today was.
Absolutely. So speaking of Josh, he was candid with us, said, that move over to the right side, played so much at left tackle with Oregon and all that. Was a little bit difficult at first, but how do you think he's doing just getting that right side shift going?
You can see every day, a progression in his play. He's trending upward, we like to say. The good thing about him as a young guy, he's very detailed. He's not an error repeater. He's going to make mistakes. All players make mistakes, but he learns from them, corrects and doesn't repeat that error, which is you always want to see. You see the same. You're starting to see the same fluidity in his set as you saw in his college tape at left. So that's when you know he's making progress. And for him, the biggest thing is he's a perfectionist and he's very hard on himself. So his analysis of his play is probably a little bit more critical than it needs to be. But you like that in him because he always wants to be his best.
Yeah, 100%. He was. We were actually talking to him after the Patriots game, and we're thinking like, bro, you had a really solid game, and he wasn't having any of it. He's like, the team didn't have a solid game, so I don't care about any of that. Going up against Von Miller, going up against Frankie Louvu when he's on that side, Harold Landry in the joint practice, how much is that going to help his development?
Oh, I mean, the thing is like he needs to see that now because in the NFL, everybody has a good pass rusher, and there are some elite ones he's going to see. And there's some in the division he's going to see more than once. So those reps are invaluable for him. And the fact that those guys are on our team, they do a great job being veterans of coaching him after the rep. And those are things that are, I can tell them, the other line coaches can tell them, but when a vet like Von Miller, a really dynamic player like Frankie Louvu are telling him, hey, this is what I see. Hey, when you do this, that makes it hard on me. Those are things that, like, for a young player, he needs, put those in your bank and keep them for the rest of your career, and he's done a good job of that, really trying to pick everybody's brain, not only Laramie's, but the defenders' brains too, of, hey, what can I do better? What are you seeing? And he for his age, being as young as he is, he's really got a really professional attitude and approach to his game.
And speaking of Laremy, you've had over a month now to get to know him and work with him. Just kind of what has he brought to the group?
Well, obviously you see all the ability, all the talent, all the experience. But I think what has been most impressive to me, not that I didn't think he had it, but the level is just the work ethic. He loves to work. He always wants more, and that's something that I think it's easy for players to look at another player who's at his level and go, man, he's just good. And it's good for me to have him in there because I go, no, guys, yeah, he's good, but the reason he's so good is look at all these things he's doing in the margins to make himself at that level. He's maximizing his talent. And that kind of stuff is just so valuable for a room because then there's little things the guys see that he does that's really anybody can do. And so you see guys starting to mimic those things. And that's, like I said, that just brings so much value to the room.
And moving inside the left guard, Brandon Coleman, unfortunately, had to miss some time. How do you kind of help make sure that he's still progressing, getting those mental reps when he can't get the physical reps?
He's in all the meetings. He's in all the things that aren't actual physical activity. I mean, he does the walkthroughs and things like that. But Brandon's a very smart player, so he's very engaged in all the things that he can be engaged in. Plus, we film everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep him locked in, and today he got a little bit more in the walkthrough. So we keep him in the fold. So I'm not worried about the mental preparation. He is a young player, but he's stayed in on top of that. I mean, he approaches every meeting as if he's in practice and playing. Yeah. So I think that helps him immensely.
And Tyler Biadasz, second year now, working with you, second year calling your protections and working with Jaden. How do you see that relationship and his ability to do his duty kind of improving?
I see them seeing it through the same eyes. Which they did last year, but you're seeing it like almost like in the snap of a second. Yeah. They see it the same way. They call it the same way. Tyler's communication has been very clear, very pronounced. It's very commanding. So that's the progression you like to see. There are times now where he knows when to make a change because he sees it the same way Jaden does, and he knows Jaden's going to change it, so he'll go ahead and change it. Or sometimes he'll change it and confirm, and Jaden will confirm, yeah, that's what I want. Or Jaden can change something at the last second, and Ty knows exactly what he's trying to say to him, and he gets the changes made. So you're seeing just the speed at which they're doing it. That's the year two stuff. Yeah. They were on the same page last year, but it's just the speed at which they're doing it now is really good.
I know you guys love Sam Cosmi, especially when he's on the field. But at this point in the process for 2025, how much can you kind of, I don't want to say worry about, but think about when he might return, and how much do you just kind of have to focus on who's on the field?
Well, those are things that are out of my control. They're really out of his control. Yeah. So we kind of deal with the situation at hand. But Sam has been like busting his tail. He's in every meeting. He's asking questions, once again, as if he was playing tomorrow. So he's locked and loaded mentally. He is fully locked in there. But he's also, when he's not in our room, he is attacking rehab with a maniacal, kind of disposition, if you will. He is busting his tail. So I don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. Like I said, those are things that are out of our control. And I know he's going to do everything he can to get back as fast as he can. The big thing is we got to make sure that kind of sometimes protect the player from the player. Yeah. Make sure that when you do come back, you're able to protect yourself and play at the level that you can play at and nothing below that. So.
Last two guys I want to ask you about, Nick Allegretti first and then Andrew Wiley. With Nick, DQ really praised his leadership. He's in a situation moving to the right side, and it's kind of evident, right? He's probably going to have like a depth role here before not too long, but he's really kind of taken that in stride. How do you feel Nick has kind of done moving to that right side, but also I've seen him getting some second team center reps for you?
Well, both Nick and Wiley came from, their upbringing in the league were guys who got in as a 7th round draft pick and an undrafted rookie free agent, and they built their careers being backups that were versatile. Yeah. And they've always had to compete. And that's in their DNA. They're two of the grittiest, selfless guys I've ever been around. They're two of the best guys in the meeting room from the leadership standpoint, their professionalism. So them playing different roles, one, doesn't surprise me because that's how they were brought up in this league. But two, it doesn't faze them compete. That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So they're wired the right way to do that. And all that does is that gives you, comfort as a coach knowing that, hey, I got some versatility because I know that at the drop of a dime, I can move these pieces around and they could go in. They're not gonna be in their feelings. They're not gonna be. They just want to play, compete, and win. Yeah. And that's infectious in the room because there's guys that maybe haven't got to the level they're at, going, hey, I got to wherever I can play, I better play. These guys, look at these guys. They're not saying one thing about playing a new position. Yeah. Nick Allegretti played the most snaps at any offensive lineman in the league last year. And he gets moved to another side. Right. Didn't say boo about it. Matter of fact, he said, yeah, no problem, coach. He goes, I love to compete. You don't have to worry about me. That was his, and that was it. So Andrew Wiley, the same thing. Hey, go over here and play guard. Not a peep. Go over, boom, compete. Mm-hmm. And that's really how all of us should look at it in the room. Yeah. Because, like I said, you're never going to have the same lineup every week or throughout the course of a season. So we've got to be ready to put the best 5 out there wherever they may line up every single week, and everybody's got to be ready at a moment's notice. So that's why we cross-train so many guys. That's why we're moving guys now, because you have to find out who can do what so you know what options you have when something goes sideways.
It's great to hear Coach Johnson detail the why behind moving players around, emphasizing that building depth and preparing for the what-ifs is crucial for season-long success. And I'm really glad we got a chance to talk to Bobby Johnson on Thursday, because I was a little bit worried that Josh Harnley Jr. getting left tackle reps was going to spark some sort of commotion, whether it be the day of or later. So I wanted to get him on the record, clarify that right up front. Hearing the philosophy on versatility is one thing, but seeing it put into action on the practice field reveals the team's true intentions. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. This year, Locked On Commanders is playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. We're watching Dan Quinn and the coaching staff build their roster. And now it's your turn to be the general manager. You can draft your own team and prove that you've got what it takes to win a championship. And to celebrate 28 years of football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days through August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. Of course, if you're into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues, or you can even go through and join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. The Commanders coaching staff is clearly using this camp to test the limits of their players' roles, looking for hidden strengths on both sides of the ball, and I absolutely love it. Talking about offensive line versatility on display Thursday. Talked to Bobby Johnson a little bit about this, but again, with Laremy Tunsil having a veteran day off, rookie offensive tackle Josh Connolly Jr. got to take reps with the first team on the left side. Andrew Wiley was on the right side, right tackle. Julian Good-Jones was in there as the starting left guard for the first team. Nick Allegretti at right guard, Tyler Biotish at center. It's a combination of offensive line that we haven't really seen before, but it was an opportunity for Josh Connolly to go out there and get those reps and honestly kind of get back to what he's most comfortable with, right? You heard Bobby Johnson talk about it. I was talking about it on the sideline during practice when I noticed it with some of the other beat members. And it's basically kind of what we assumed is, okay, well, it's a good day. It's a jog through pace, not heavily contested. Go out there, get him back into it, into a normal group. He's been doing well, right? I think early on in training camp, he did have some up and down days, some up and down moments. Certainly in the one-on-ones against the New England Patriots, he got beat by Harold Landry pretty much every time they went up against each other individually. When you got to the team drills, did a pretty good job standing up. When you got to the preseason game Friday night, did a pretty good job against the New England Patriots. And like I said on the show, following that, and like I just said to Coach Johnson, wasn't really interested in hearing from us how good of a job he did individually because he didn't like the way that the team performed. And you love that, right? You absolutely love that atmosphere, that attitude. So kind of rewarding him and saying, dude, you've been doing such a great job. First round draft pick, rookie, all this pressure, first year in the NFL, moving opposite sides that you've never played before in major, football. We're going to reward you with a day to come through there. And if Laremy Tunsil, knock on wood, it never happens, but if Laremy Tunsil has to miss time with an injury or something like that, who's your next best left tackle? It's probably Josh Connolly Jr. So you flip him over there, you put Andrew Wiley in at right tackle, and you roll with that unit. I think it's a great thing for the team to do, and is exactly what I thought was happening when we saw it. So I'm glad we were able to get with Coach Johnson, confirm it. The rest of the 11 on 11s, you heard Coach Johnson praise Nick Allegretti and Andrew Wiley. And Andrew Wiley, or Nick Allegretti rather, was praised as well by Dan Quinn in the press conference before practice as, quote, one of the leaders on our team, end quote. And I'm not surprised at all just from getting to know Nick last year about the approach that he's having to, being this rotational player, potentially moving into a depth position once Sam Cosmi comes back. Speaking of some other observations here, Jalen Lane is another player that's been getting worked around the formation. Obviously, he's working out of the slot, doing really well there. But DQ also talked about putting him outside, especially in that scrimmage. Try to see, what can he do out there? How can we focus on him there? How can we feature him there? And how can we use him? So, again, when you go back to, the Burgundy team led by Jaden Daniels struggled, well, there's a little bit of more insight into what's going on the field. Yeah, it was Jaden Daniels. Yes, it was the first team offense, but they're literally using wide receiver Jalen Lane in a role that they've never featured him in up until that day of the scrimmage, just to kind of see how it would go. And truthfully, there was one pass there with off the fingertips of Jalen Lane, nearly a touchdown. So overall, for a first day of practice with Jalen kind of playing that X or Z position, it actually went pretty stinking well if you put it in that type of context, right? So again, just always a little bit of a reminder that we, the people on the ground watching every day, and the people listening to shows and all that stuff, we never 100% know everything that's going on, especially behind the scenes. Speaking of some new wrinkles, something that I did notice in the scrimmage that I thought was really awesome, I'm really glad DQ really hit on during his pre-practice press conference on Thursday, Dorrance Armstrong and Jacob Martin. Dorrance Armstrong is a DN, true blue DN. Jacob Martin is a D-end, sometimes stand-up outside linebacker. Both of them rushing on passing downs inside against the guards on reps in the Bernie and Gold scrimmage. It was a new way to use both those guys, and man, was it effective. I'm not promising you it's going to happen in the regular season now. I'll tell you right now, don't be surprised if you see that wrinkle unleashed a little bit against Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, it's something that you might be tipping your opponent to. Got it. But you know what? It's worth it to try to go out there and see if you can fix, if you can be effective in a real game against another opponent, especially if the Bengals come out there with the starting offensive line. I know the Bengals don't have the greatest offensive line anyway, but it would be great to get some work done. I thought it was a really great move. Saw it today in practice a little bit in the jog through. Can't get too in depth to it, but since DQ talked about that specifically, we'll go ahead and hit it here on the show. I thought it was a great idea. Really excited about it. Rookie D tackle. Second year D tackle, Johnny Newton, also getting rotational work. Got some reps with the first team, got some reps with the second team. Saw him lining up 3 tech, saw him lining up, about 5-7 tech, not wide 9 by any means, but saw him doing some other things. Really stood out the most, DQ said, quote unquote, as one of the players in the scrimmage. His arrow is pointing up. He's super healthy. And that second year is really starting to kind of take off for him. So some interesting practice notes, good interview with Bobby Johnson. Really appreciated him giving me a little bit of extended time. Typically our episode interviews, I only like to keep them about 5 minutes long, but with Bobby, so many players to talk about, so many nuances to the offensive line that I wanted to talk about. So I really appreciate his time. Actually, even hung out a little bit longer after the interview, chopping up with myself and some of the other beat reporters, Lake Lewis Jr., Donna Hopkins, Candy Waller, people like that. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we're going to be back out at Ashburn for a practice. If you're doing the counting, today's episode number 5, which means we're done for the week, but we're going out to practice, right? So I'm there to work. We're going to do work. Bonus episode coming on Friday. Bonus episode coming up on Saturday. Then we're going to have a regular episode dropping Sunday night into Monday morning. Monday for games. It never stops, man. Locked On Commanders. We're going to keep doing it. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you can text them directly to me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders. We've had a good amount of new insiders coming through. I appreciate all of you. I've had a couple really text me and tell me how excited they were about joining the program and how they should have done it sooner. I really wish there was a way for you to just kind of discover it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, you really can't get the feel for what it is to be an insider until you sign up. So again, if you sign up, you get your first 2 weeks free. You can see what it's like. If you like it, if you dig it, stick around, hang out. If you don't like it, hey, you gave it a try, and that's all I can ask you to do, right? Join subtext.com/Locked On Commanders to become an insider today. Thursday was a very good day, I think, to be an insider. A lot of information coming insiders' ways. NFL fantasy draft season is here. So for your second listen, go to Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Listen every day to prep your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take home your league's championship this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. To the everydayers, I see you every day. I appreciate you every day. And just like I did in the beginning, I want to close this out by giving you a special thank you today. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.